Okay, so just a quick overview. As you can see, we're going to start out, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the limitations in our data, describe our demographics and our population and the individuals that we support, then kind of going over the services and specifically looking at some of the disparity in those services. And finally, we're going to talk about efforts in the last year and over the last couple of years to increase equity. All right. So next is data limitations. So this data reported is from fiscal year July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. Some of the POS payments or some of the contracts may not have, all the data may not have fully come in. Sometimes we have about 3 years to close on contracts. So some of the fiscal information is still being calculated. So we may have some missing some of the data. And next. And also to note, data displayed represents the cost of the services that client receives that are paid for. So things that may not be reflected that are also other supports and services that individuals may receive would include like cost of services paid by Medi-Cal, private health insurance, special education, in-home supported services, SSI, et cetera. There's also a number of services and supports the regional center provides that would not show up in individual purchase of service data because they're under larger contracts. For example, our crisis support services, we don't do individual POS for each crisis intervention, but that's encumbered in a larger contract. Similarly, supported employment, transportation, those might not be reflected in this data as far as supports and services that we provide. Okay, next.
I'm going to switch it over to the PowerPoint really fast, Tom. Sorry about that. It's a better view.
Okay.
There we go. I was able to locate it. So this is your next slide, though. You're good.
Okay. Thank you, Rhiannon.
Mm-hmm.
And also, some individuals are counted in this data regardless of their status. For example, individuals that the cases may have been closed, typically children exiting after age 3. So they may have exited during this last, some point during the fiscal year. That data would not capture some of the services that they may have received, or they'll be represented in our population, but not necessarily in the purchase of services. Similarly, individuals that were transferred during this fiscal year or cases that were inactivated. All right, next. So looking at the demographics and the breakdown of demographics, there are many clients who may have more than one diagnosis. Therefore, when looking at the sum of the clients reported in all the categories, there may be, for example, you're looking at autism, and there's so many individuals represented in autism and so many represented in epilepsy. Those may be counted twice because you may have an individual that has both of those co-occurring diagnoses. All right, so individuals that we support, we'll review the number of clients by diagnosis, age range, race or ethnicity, primary language, and residence type. Westside Regional Center is one of 21 regional centers. Currently have 114 service coordinators, and we support almost 11,000 clients or individuals in our catchment area in West Los Angeles area. Of those individuals, we have about 3,800 individuals identified on the autism spectrum disorder, followed by individuals with intellectual disability, then cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and also category 5. You'll see that our largest representative category now is individuals identified with autism spectrum disorder. And you should remember that we're kind of capturing some of these individuals twice because you may have an autism spectrum disorder with intellectual disability, for example. Of the individuals that we support, our largest population is ages 3 to 21 in our children, and that's about a little over almost 5,000 cases. And then followed by adult clients ages 22 plus, almost 4,000. And then also shortly behind that is our early start, our ages 0 to 2, with about approximately 2,300. By ethnicity or race, individuals supported, our largest ethnicity, individuals identified as Hispanic, almost 4,000 clients, followed by Caucasian or white with 2,700, followed by African American, 2,300, and then we have about 1,400 identifying themselves as other, and other categories that we have, including 515 as Asian, AI, AN, it's American Indian or Alaskan Native, we have 14, and NH and OPI is Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. And in individuals identifying by primary language, we can see that primary population, about 8,800 identifying as being primarily English speaking. Second category with almost 2,000 individuals reporting as primarily as having the primary language of Spanish. And then an emerging population in Farsi speaking, we have about 55 individuals. And then we have 109 individuals reporting as other. Also looking at demographics by residents. So you can see largest population of individuals is identifying as living in the home of their parent or guardian. That's about 9,000. Then followed by almost 1,000 individuals that are identifying as being independent or in supported living situation. Then we have about 422 folks in community care facilities, 370 in foster homes, 118 in ICF and continuous nursing, and then 44 and 64 individuals identifying as other. So some of the services that we provide, what we're going to look at is, as you know, regional center, we tend to go with a lot of acronyms. So kind of review some of the commonly used technology. And then we're going to break it down and look at the dollar amount of services expended per person by race, by age, and by residence type. All right, so typical term you'll hear, POS, purchase of service, FY or fiscal year, it's a 1-year period chosen by a company to report its financial information. Ours typically runs from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020 in this particular capture. So from July through June. Authorized services, those are services that have been authorized to be funded, but not necessarily utilized. So there's slight discrepancy we'll talk about there between authorized and utilized. Expenditure represents a payment that's made to actually purchase the service. Per capita, the average amount spent per person. And finally, utilization. So that's people actually using those services that are authorized for them. All right, so looking at the dollar amount of services authorized and expended per capita by race or ethnicity. You can see one of our, so remember a smaller subset of our population, American Indian or Alaskan Native. We have sort of our largest amount of expenditure with about 54,000 per capita, and followed by Caucasians. And so you look at the graph just to it might not, so the blue bar is those that are services that are authorized, and the red is those that are actually expended or used, that are utilized by the individuals. So you'll see that we're authorizing more services than are actually being utilized. And the next largest expenditure you'll see that we have with Caucasians having been authorized almost 40,000 in services with about 30,000 expended, then followed by African American with 35,000 being authorized compared to 27,000. And the next group we have, and you can kind of go down, our Hispanic population, Latino population with about 20,000, almost 21,000 being authorized with about 15,000 expended. And again, it's important to note the difference between authorized and expended. Authorized is those services that we agreed on services, but the red bar, again, those that were actually utilized or that we expended. And as we go through this, I mean, if you want to type questions, if you have questions about the data, you can type it in. We're going to have a point at the end to kind of have a general discussion, but if there's something that people are not clear about, you can type it in. I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability. All right, next slide. All right, so the dollar amount expended, so actually spent per capita by age range. And what you can see, so we have the red is an early start, 0 to 2, green being our children, young adult, 3 to 21, and then our blue being adults 22 and older. So as you can see from the graph, our primary expenditures occurring with adults, then followed by children and young adults with the least range of our expenditures in our early start services. And kind of looking at a breakdown of that. So again, the American Indian, Alaska Native, showing our highest amount of expenditures for those in the adult population. So having expended about 91,000 per capita. So that's like kind of averaged over persons. Something to keep in mind with data in general. So with this, we're talking about not a large sample set, not a large population. We probably got, I think we have less than like 25 individuals in this. So if you have one person that's in a nursing facility requiring a lot of overhead care, that's going to skew this per capita statistic. Whereas if you have a larger sample with several hundred individuals, and then you're kind of averaging that out per capita, it's, so your statistics are going to be a little bit skewed depending on your sample size. Our Caucasian, our white, is largest amount of expenditures for adults at about almost 60,000 per capita, averaging out, followed again by African American with about 48,000, and Hispanic with 36,000. And I'm realizing, I kind of wish we could kind of look at some of the percentages here and kind of compare them. But where we see sort of our largest disparities, if you're kind of like eyeballing the graphics here, is definitely in our adult services. That's where you'll see that if you're looking at sort of our early start services, there's less of a disparity between the different groups. And similarly, there's a little bit more disparity with children and young adults, but probably our largest gaps in disparity looking at the adult population and the expenditures for those 22 and over. All right. So now kind of breaking it down, looking at dollar amount expended per capita by residence type. So it looks like our largest is CCFs, which are community care facilities, where we're spending about 122,000. So this is a very enhanced care model requiring individuals requiring a lot of supported services, nursing, a lot of in-home care, followed by those in adults that are still in a foster home, identified in foster home placement, almost $100,000 per capita, and then followed by about 70,000, almost 71,000 being spent per capita in independent living support, supported living situations. And then behind that, we have ICF, or continuous nursing facilities, and about 33,000, in-home at about 12,000, and then our least expenditure with foster home, potentially because DCFS, is Department of Children's Services, is probably providing a lot of those in-home supports, but foster children that we have identified in foster homes, about 4,000. All right, next. Other thing that we're going to look at, so talking about the number of people without services overall, and breaking it down by race or ethnicity, and then kind of thinking about some of the reasons behind these disparities. So about 87,000 or 9,524 are receiving case management and actual expenditures on services. So these are 87% of individuals receiving some type of service, some type of support, some type of POS funded support, as compared to about 13%, or about 1,400 folks that are identified as active clients, but that are not receiving any type of identified regional center service. And so then if we break this down and kind of look at those people without services and breaking it down by ethnicity or race, we can see that our largest population, not where we're not using or expending services, are about almost 600 folks identifying as Hispanic, followed about 325 as white, 250 as Black, and then 209 as other, 65 as Asian, and then we go down to our Native Hawaiian and American Indian, Alaskan Native. So we can see a largest population not utilizing services, the Hispanic, followed by white and African American. So we have a lot of individuals in the Hispanic group not identifying or not using services or expenditures. So barriers to equitable access. Why aren't individuals getting these needed services and supports? So we had a cultural disparity grant about 2 years before, and we had a enhanced case management team that was really spending a lot of time surveying families, speaking with families, and really trying to help us understand and identify what are some of the barriers and challenges to accessing services. One of the primary things that we found is that there was a lack of knowledge of the available services and supports, and not having adequate knowledge on how to request them through their service coordinator. Also, there were a number of individuals that identified that the services currently that are available through the regional center were not those that they felt specifically met the needs of the individual or the family. In COVID-19, trying to look specifically at some of the barriers and challenges we ran into, concerns obviously around the technology gaps, households identifying that they had difficulty affording a laptop or tablet, paying for regular internet access, for every month to access virtual services. Also, there was a real switch to an alternative service delivery model, more of a virtual delivery, where households were requiring assistance in learning how to use that technology to receive those services. A lot of individuals with, as I think all of us probably identify as, we've a big learning curve this last year, and really catching up on all the available technology, Zoom, webinars, how to access those. So I think all of us probably have had, and some it's been more difficult than others, really catching up on that curve. And certainly we see that with the regional center. Also, I think the school districts have experienced that, where there's a lot of students that have not been able to participate as effectively in virtual learning platforms. So efforts to increase equity, what have we been doing? So we're going to review our efforts to promote equity, particularly in this 2020, and our plan to promote equity and reduce disparities for 2021. So Department of Developmental Services provided us with a lot of special language this last year and exceptions that allow the regional centers to be creative. And Westside Regional Center certainly took all of that to heart and tried to implement those exceptions when they were available. So some of the things we were able to do, for example, is specialized services, specialized supervision. So these are services for parents, and typically how this is getting additional supports or services in the home to support an individual. Typically, this is individuals are not eligible for this service that are working or in school full time. But with COVID-19, we were able to make an exception, recognizing the challenges of having full-time working parents and full-time working full-time students in the home, and everybody being in the home. So we were able to make some exceptions and being able to provide specialized supervision in those situations. Also, real increased use of personal assistants. So the PA services, as we call them, they typically help with daily living activities such as bathing, dressing, hygiene, meal preparation. Typically that's we're funding for somebody from an outside agency to come in and support the family. But the recognition during COVID was that there's a lot of families that were not going to be receptive to somebody outside of the family coming in, and supporting the family. So we made exceptions and we're funding for people within the immediate family to be eligible to be funded through personal assistance and to provide PA hours within the household. We've had a number of distribution events, both for individuals that we support, as well as providers, ILS, SLS, residential providers for personal protective equipment, cloth face masks, N95, hand sanitizer, and a whole host of activities so that people, as far as being able to keep safe. We also, starting last fall, we started offering a drive-through COVID-19 testing on site so that individuals could come through and regularly get tested. This was in partnership with the Central Neighborhood Health Foundation. And also I should mention Equitable was also helping us with COVID testing. All right, next. And one thing I would also add, and we had one today, we've been having weekly vaccination clinics. So we've been providing vaccinations for individuals we support, for family members, for ILS, SLS, residential providers. So trying so that individuals, that we can get as much of our community vaccinated as quickly as possible, in the quest to kind of get back to normal somewhat, or to the new normal, and also to ensure that people are able to access community events and community supports safely. All right. We also had cultural and disparity grants this last year. One of our grants was creating successful transitions. We recognized that where we had a lot of breakdown, where there's a lot of stress and turmoil in families, is around key transition points. And so really trying to, and recognizing that education is one thing that helps reducing disparity, is really trying to provide a number of different seminars. For example, on early childhood transitions, we had a 3-part virtual series for parents and guardians of children up to 3 years of age who are transitioning out of the Early Start program. There's a lot of confusion about that handoff from primarily having regional center early start supports and services to transitioning to the school district, and trying to help people understand that process, understand how the regional center can support them, and also the school district's responsibility and the family's responsibility, and how to kind of make as smooth as handoff as possible. In addition, we hosted a 7-part virtual series looking at transitioning from high school to community life. We recognize that this is also a particularly stressful time, and trying to provide as much individual education as we can to prepare students for life after high school, for college, employment, independent living, as well as looking at potential changes in healthcare, dentistry, et cetera. And you can see we were able to save this on YouTube, and we have on our website, you can find the link. If you did not have the opportunity to attend it in person, it's still available, and we still have people logging in and looking at our series on YouTube. We had a lot of great information, so I certainly encourage anybody that missed it. There's a lot of good information in these. So plan to promote equity and reduce disparities for 2021. Obviously, one of our primary efforts right now is to really look at getting us past this pandemic, is ensuring the safety of our community, to ensure that individuals have greater opportunities for community access. Anybody that's gone through trying to navigate the vaccination, trying to get vaccinated through the website, through the California website, it's challenging. We recognize that a lot of individuals we support and talking with families have had challenges accessing vaccinations. So not only are we hosting weekly vaccination clinic in the parking lot at Westside Regional Center, where we've got, I think today, the statistic, almost 700 individuals and families that we support have been vaccinated. But recognizing that other people may want to go to different community care clinics, healthcare, we also have a vaccination appointment hotline. So you see the phone number posted here, and an email. So if you're having difficulty accessing a vaccination, you need support, we set up a COVID task force team to be able to assist individuals and their families that are having difficulties navigating the vaccination site or need to make appointments. We were also recently awarded money to do a technology lending library, and we set up with a community partner to help with a lending library to give people iPads to be able to access virtual remote learning platforms, services, supports, as well as technical support and training and how to utilize those. We're currently involved in strategic planning. And one of the things that we're really focusing on in our strategic planning efforts and looking at our 3-year strategic plan development is the best ways that we can promote equity, and really looking at some of the challenges that we've experienced and trying to really understand how we might do a better job doing broader access and equity, and really helping to ensure that everybody's getting equitable services. We're still continuing with our Creating Successful Transitions workshops, and we created, particularly out of that program, an early start booklet for parents and caregivers that really provides a lot of information about understanding the early start program, exiting and transitioning out of it, and also all the different generic and community resources, because this is, we recognize, a very viable time in an individual's development in their early childhood. And finally, right now, what we're developing is we're developing a virtual learning platform for service coordinators, program managers, and some of the individuals we support, utilizing motivational interviewing skills to be able to really work on engagement, on how we engage individuals in a conversation about what kind of supports and services might be useful, how to access those services and supports, and how to really have a more productive and creative conversation, really lay the framework for ensuring that we don't have anybody on that slide in the next year that shows up in that little to no POS expenditures. All right. All right, so I've done a lot of talking. I don't know if people have questions, comments, things. So right now, if you can And Rhiannon, correct me if I'm wrong, so you can type or raise your hand, and we want to hear from you and any questions that you may have.
Yeah, you can go ahead and enter your questions into the Q&A box if you're on the computer and want to go ahead and ask your question that way. You can also raise your hand on Zoom. If you're on the phone, you would go ahead and press *9 if you'd like to raise your hand, and we can bring you over to the audio side to ask your question. So I have one hand raised. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this individual over to speak. And Diana, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Ok, ¿me escuchan?
Hi there.
¿Sí? ¿Me escuchan? Sí, está perfecto. Ok. Mi pregunta es la siguiente. ¿Por qué las coordinadoras no están totalmente capacitadas? ¿O qué es lo que a ellas les impide poder dar los servicios a los niños en lugar de que los padres tengamos que tener tantas clases para poder entender qué servicios ustedes tienen? ¿Que por qué las coordinadoras?
Buenas tardes, señora. Mi nombre es César García, soy el director de servicios para el cliente aquí en el Centro Regional de Westside. Me da mucho gusto que usted pudo estar aquí con nosotros para poder hacer esa pregunta también. Una cosa que les quiero recordar es que lo que nosotros siempre tratamos de enfocarnos en el Centro Regional es crear un ambiente de un equipo, porque se necesita todo un equipo para poder apoyar a las diferentes necesidades que tiene uno entre la familia. Y los diferentes miembros de ese equipo pueden ser obviamente el individuo, la familia, otros familiares, el coordinador de servicios, incluyendo y otros especialistas. Siempre tenemos que tratar de hacer todo lo posible como un equipo para llegar a poder dar los servicios necesarios de las diferentes necesidades. Y su pregunta específicamente, ¿por qué las trabajadoras no dan esa información? Ese es el deber de ellos, ese es el trabajo. Es por eso que las reuniones que se tienen son muy importantes, porque ahí se usa esa oportunidad para poder platicar de las diferentes necesidades. Y a veces como padre uno no sabe cómo explicar las necesidades que uno tiene, que si las pudieran expresar, entonces los trabajadores sí podían ofrecer diferentes servicios. Entonces, siempre estamos trabajando con nuestros trabajadores del centro regional para tratar de darles la experiencia de cómo platicar con las familias, de qué manera tratar de comunicarse para poder ver bien exactamente esas necesidades. El doctor Kelly hoy día explicó que esa es una de las cosas que estamos haciendo. Estamos entrenando más a los trabajadores sociales aquí del centro regional para poder tener esas conversaciones con las familias y tratar de implementar esos servicios. Pero como padres, y si ustedes son también parte de ese equipo, también ustedes tienen ciertas responsabilidades. Y no quiero decir que solo ustedes tienen esas responsabilidades, los trabajadores también, para poder llegar a proveer esos servicios que son necesarios. Pero siempre estamos haciendo todo lo posible para entrenar bien a los trabajadores para que trabajen bien con las familias.
Gracias, César. Realmente es un poco preocupante porque, por ejemplo, puedo hablar un ejemplo muy claro y muy cerca. Mi hijo a los 5 años fue evaluado apenas con ustedes. Vine apenas a este país en ese momento. Me mandaron al centro regional por la pediatra. Y mi coordinadora pudo ver que mi hijo no hablaba. A sus 5 años venía hablando 10 palabras. Y miró que tenía comportamientos. Y miraba. Y de hecho es tan triste cuando uno lee los informes y dice ahí, el niño se chupa los dedos, el niño habla 10 palabras, o el niño tiene ciertos comportamientos y su mamá le hace cosquillas y el niño se calma. Entonces, uno como padre, pues no sabe de qué se trata el centro regional, porque no está, primero yo no vivía y pensé que tal vez esa era mi debilidad, pero me he dado cuenta que hay muchos niños que nacen incluso aquí mismo y tienen esas mismas barreras. Y después de 5 años, ya mi hijo tiene casi 11, haber entrado a grupos de apoyo de padres en las mismas comunidades que nos ayudan, te das cuenta que podían haberte dado tal vez algo tan sencillo como un dispositivo o mencionarte, ¿sabes qué? Pide un dispositivo de habla, ¿correcto? Pero mi hijo ha tenido que pasar 5 años sin ese dispositivo y ese es el punto. Si bien es cierto, todos somos equipo, estamos hablando, pero en las cosas que nosotros no tenemos el conocimiento, no podemos exigir. Ahora me pueden decir a mí, si yo vuelvo a los 5 años atrás y con todas las cosas que he aprendido en estos 5 años, pues obviamente yo le hubiese dicho, ¿por qué no me ofreces eso, no? Pero a ese punto es que es tan importante que muchos padres desconocemos incluso de nuevos servicios tecnológicos o de cosas que ellas nos podían haber ayudado. Y el problema es que estamos hablando que son niños que si en ese momento, a más temprana edad, si le hubiese podido dar más recursos, tal vez en este momento no estaríamos usando más servicios, porque ya la mente del niño es un poco más grande y ya no es tan fresca. Entonces, sí es súper importante que los coordinadores realmente no entendemos como padres si ellos se ponen en el lado del ser humano o se ponen en el lado, entiendo, de su punto de vista profesional, pero deben ser un soporte en todo tiempo de los papás. De hecho, si ustedes podrían hacer una encuesta a padres que son nuevos, van a tener mucha información y estadística de qué es lo que piensan que es un centro regional. De hecho, muchos papás no entienden y se preguntan, ¿qué es el centro regional? No sé nada, no sé para qué hay que hacer todo ese proceso. Y
Claro,
entonces ahí uno se da cuenta pues que hay mucho desconocimiento. Muchas
claro.
gracias por dejarme participar.
De nada, señora. Y créame que estamos haciendo diferentes cosas para educar y comunicarnos con la comunidad, para asegurar que toda nuestra comunidad tenga la información necesaria para poder abogar por sí mismo, pero a la misma vez esperar que el propio coordinador ah, sea una de las personas que esté abogando por esa persona y por la familia. Muchas gracias, señora. I'll quickly summarize. I don't know if there was interpretation in this question, but we had a parent here who wanted to make a comment. Basically, her comment was that why is it that service coordinators do not have the knowledge to be able to support families? In particular, in her case, she had a young child. She has a child. You know, at the time, he was 5 years old, and she feels that service coordinators did not, offer appropriate services or make suggestions on, where to seek help and support. So that was her comment, and I replied by indicating that it's very important that we work collaboratively as a partner, as a partnership. The service coordinators, parents, and any other person that's going to be part of that support team. I acknowledge that, as a regional center, we definitely want to do our jobs to make sure that our service coordinators are well trained so that they are able to really have, great dialogue with our families. Dr. Kelly mentioned one of the things that we're doing is actually, doing some further training for our service coordinators for motivational interviewing, because sometimes families do not know how to really express certain needs. And therefore, if the service coordinators don't hear those needs, then they're not making suggestions on what services might support those needs. So we're working collaboratively on, one, to try and educate our community so that they have all the information they need about, what is it that the regional center can do, how to access resources and supports. And at the same time, we're on an ongoing basis trying to work with our service coordinators so that they are, an advocate for that child, just like, a parent or any other member of that team. Thank you.
Caesar, thank you. I'm glad you're here to field that one since my Spanish is not up to par. So thank you on that end. I would add a piece to that training that you were mentioning is not only a training on our side for service coordinators into how to have a more productive and effective conversation, but also a training for families, like kind of laying the groundwork on really encouraging and empowering them to ask questions, to give us the information. And sometimes the service coordinators are not going to know all the information and facts, but fortunately we have a lot of supports. Caesar certainly has a lot of information, works directly with service coordinators, program managers that have a lot of experience. So if there's questions that they don't know, they also know to come to some of the other staff and some of the other people that may have had more experience or may know about a particular service area. So, but we need to make sure that we're asking the right questions, and families need to make sure they're asking the right questions so that we're having the most productive conversation to make sure that we're meeting everybody's needs in the middle.
Okay, we have quite a few folks with their hands up, so I'm going to try and go in the order that I saw people's hands go up. So for the phone number 310-642, I'm going to unmute you in just a second. Okay, so if you go ahead and press *6, you should be able to speak with us. 310-642-0438.
Hello.
Hi, Russell.
Hey, Russell.
Hi. Hi. My question is that they're given the vaccine in the clinic and outside the parking lot at Westside, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So Russell, if you know anybody that wants to make an appointment, you can either have them let the service coordinator know. You can look at the email. They can email us, and we'll schedule them in and give them a call. And you could walk in or you could drive in, and it's set up in tents on every Thursday in our parking lot. They just drive through or walk up, and we have the Moderna vaccination. Somebody in the audience had a question about what type of. We've been using primarily the Moderna vaccination. If you're 16 to 18, we're also we have a connection with Kaiser that's doing the Pfizer vaccination, which is the only vaccination authorized for adolescents in that age group.
Okay, I'm going to move us on because we are close to the end here and we have several questions. So let's see. Felicia, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi there. I tuned in late. I'm so sorry. I didn't get a lot of the information, but we were talking about disparity before then. And I just wanted to get just a recap. I'm so sorry that I was kind of late, but I wanted to just get a recap as to what that looks like moving forward. I know that there were some grants. I kind of heard a little bit about that, but I know that we are working on some things. And I just wanted to get just a short little recap of what we're doing this year forward with the grants we have or the work we expect to do.
So a couple of things that we talked about, Felicia, is we've got a number of different transition trainings. We recognize that one of the barriers to accessing services is just knowledge. So it's really educating folks specifically around key transition points. So when they're transitioning from early start to over 3 services into the school district, and also when families are transitioning from high school into adult services, is really trying to educate them not only about regional center supports and services that they should be contemplating as they transition to those points, but also how to how to access all the different community and generic resources that should also be coming into play, and insurance information, et cetera. We also did a specific guidebook on Early Start to really help people understand all the different supports and services available through Early Start and understanding Early Start programming in general. And currently we're working on doing a training, developing a virtual training series for service coordinators, managers, and also for families that teaches basically communication skills. It would be around motivational interviewing, which is a evidence-based practice used by a lot of healthcare settings. For example, it's used in hospitals for individuals that may have confusion or uncertainty or not utilizing supports for diabetes treatment. They use this as a way to really have a much more effective, engaging conversation and to really understand particular barriers and challenges or misunderstanding that people have to ensure that they're getting the right kind of support and the right kind of treatment. So we're going to be doing that. We're just currently developing the training, and we're going to be rolling that out in May and then also through the fall.
And that's with us, not like outside agencies or anything like that. That's just work that Westside itself is doing, correct?
Well, that's correct. I mean, the hope with we're kind of researching, trying to develop a training around, because we recognize that there has to be a better conversation. And I think somebody in the audience brought up, and it was a really good point, is that sometimes service coordinators may not be asking the right questions. Families may not be asking the right questions. So they're kind of not meeting in the middle, as it were, and trying to look at how we can have a much more productive, effective conversation when we are having our meetings to make sure that all the information is captured and we really understand what the individual's needs are. And the idea would be, hopefully, that we could, if this is successful, and we're actually going to research it to see the effectiveness and community engagement. If it's an effective training model, that we could replicate it potentially with other regional centers if they were interested.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. I'm pretty sure the question in the box came next, so I'm gonna go ahead and read that. Moving forward, what can we do to help the African Americans or active clients utilize their services? What type of outreach can be put into place to reach out more aggressively and effectively?
Well, I think the main thing is information. I think there's, the more and more that we talk to families, we did a survey recently, for example, looking at eligibility and intake. And there was misinformation. I never realized it was in the community, that people had to have a medical provider or a professional refer them to regional center. There was a misunderstanding amongst a lot of individuals that they didn't know that they could just self-refer to the regional center. So obviously there's a lot of individuals that we would have missed there in trying to provide education. So as much as not only as we can do outreach and do as much education to the community as possible, but we would encourage everybody to educate each other as well. If people have questions and maybe they're shy asking it of somebody at the regional center, is that you can share information, share support, share services, and share information, because the biggest gap that we see as far as access to service really comes around information. So the more information that we can share between each other from the regional center to the community and back, the more that we understand what some of the challenges are, the barriers are, and the more that we're able to really inform people, I think the better people are prepared to actually access and utilize some of the supports that we have that they may not have understood before.
So I don't want to say your first name incorrectly, but the last name is Rodriguez. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute.
Hi. I have a quick question. How I can find the support, or at least information, what regional center can do it for the client. What type of service?
So one thing that we have, and trying to see if I can find it to put it in the chat, but we have on YouTube, we have a series of videos that we created and produced on every step of the way that talks about eligibility, talks about early start services, talks about children's services, adult services. And I know it's listed on our website, and I wish I had it on hand, but we have a lot of information. Actually, what I'll put up is my email. You can email me, and because it'll probably, I'm too, somebody who needs tech help is myself, but I'll put in my email and I can find it and I can send you this, because it's a great series that has a ton of information. And Caesar, was there anything else that you would share as far as ideas about getting information about our services and supports?
Sure. I think another resource I would refer you to is our website. Within our WRC website, we've got a page that specifically talks about services, and they're actually laid out by age. So it talks about services that you would receive, you know, if your child is an early start birth to 2, and then, you know, 3 to 10. So it's broken down by ages. And so there's good information there. Another great resource is our Family Resource Center and Empowerment Center. They always are available to, you know, have conversations with families, you know, to discuss not only the resources that are available through the regional center, but resources available in the community as well.
Thank you. Because like in the past, I have to looking for it on Disability right website and Letterman Act, and you know I'm still not sure that which service you guys can provide. That's why I know that every regional center they are different, but I want to make sure website what kind of service that you guys can provide to the autistic kid.
And yeah, thank you for Caesar, thanks for jumping in on that. And absolutely, that too, Family Resource Center is a great support. Those are parents, and they're very familiar and very knowledgeable about the supports. And also, if you look at our website, and I'm just kind of looking at it right now, you'll see at the top, it says home, who we are, intake and eligibility. And if you look at services, it breaks it down. So services birth to 3, young school age 3 to 10, adolescents 11 to 17, young adults and adults. And there you can also find, we have not only a description, but they have videos in there that you can look at to really help you look at different services we offer.
Thank you.
I also just added a link to our resource portion of the website, and then we have a lot on our website, but I added a link to that page because you're able to kind of see all of the brochures in English and Spanish of the services and supports we provide across the lifespan. So that link is going to take you to every publication that we have, along with some other resources from the community. And we're going to need to kind of go through a couple more slides, I think. So let's pause on the questions here for a second. We were going to do a Zoom poll, Tom, so I'm going to set that up before we wrap up here. So we want to know if you've had any difficulties in accessing a service or support offered by your service coordinator. So this is just a quick poll. You should see it pop up on your screen, and you would just go ahead and answer yes or no. So hopefully that's now visible to you. We'll give you, a few seconds to answer that question. Okay, I'm just waiting on a few more votes. All right, if there's anyone else who would like to vote, we'll give it about 15 more seconds. Okay, thank you very much for that. And I'll just share it really fast so folks can see. Oops. There we go. So almost an even split, but 60-40 are the results on that one. And then for those of you that said yes, those would be the 18 folks that said yes, you would want to answer this next question. This next question is for you, and it will also be a Zoom poll. Sorry about that. Here it is. So for those who answered yes to that first question about having barriers to accessing service, what were those barriers or what are those barriers? And you'll want to select all that apply. Give it about 10 more seconds. Okay. And here were the results for that poll. So many people experiencing lack of knowledge, communication is a barrier, internet and technology is a barrier for some, travel and distance for one person, or travel distance, and availability and other. And I believe for the folks that entered other, we were wanting to collect that information in the Q&A box. So if you typed other, the three of you that did, if you could go ahead and enter that into our Q&A box, that would be very helpful. Right. And if you're, I'm going to close it out, but if the poll is still up on your screen, you can actually get out of it by hitting the X to close the window. We're not able to close it for you. Okay, so that was the whole poll, I think. And I'm not sure how much further you want to go with questions, Dr. Kelly. I believe we were scheduled until 5:30, but we do still have quite a few questions.
Well, I've got nowhere to go. So I'm open for questions. I just wanted to clarify. I was looking it up. If you go to YouTube and search for Westside Regional Center, it populates. We have a whole YouTube channel with information about services, supports. It's in English and Spanish. So I would also direct folks to take a look there.
Yeah, we have all of our recorded trainings are on there as well, and previous public meetings, things like that. So
it's a fact. In the new economy,
the YouTube channel is definitely a good place to be. So as far as next questions, I'm going to go ahead and unmute Rebecca Aguirre. So you should be able to speak, Rebecca.
Yes, hi. My question is, my concern is with the adult population and how the cultural variables in the Spanish communities, they're very protective of the children, even though they're adults. How does Westside moving forward, how how are they going to tackle this situation with everything that's coming down the pike with SDM, with self-determination, and all those programs coming down the pike? Thank you.
Well, that is an interesting question, and Caesar, I'm going to ask you to join me on answering this. But what I would say, and I'm going to keep going back to this, I think informing and empowering, and I certainly, being a parent myself, and I don't think it's just in the Hispanic community, being a parent, being very protective of my children and my adult children, certainly, but the best thing I think I can do is trying to give as much information and knowledge to my children. And what we can do at Westside Regional Center is not only are we trying to educate families, but we're trying to educate the individuals that we support. And that a lot of fear or a lot of protection is just around uncertainty and not knowing. And so the more knowledge, the more education, the more information you provide people, the safer they feel as far as being able to generalize and access other supports and services that maybe traditionally they thought that they didn't need, or they didn't want, and that maybe that would be helpful. Caesar, would you add anything to that?
Sure, Rebecca, you bring up an excellent point, and I think that really plays a role on why some individuals may or may not be accessing certain services. But I think with self-determination and the way that is set up, it's going to really open things up for certain individuals and families, because that's going to give them the power of choice, the power of controlling who provides support services to their loved one, where they provide services to their loved one, and how they go about providing that support. In the traditional system, we're bound with the vendors and the services that we have right now in place. But in self-determination, it opens up a whole lot of doors on being creative and being able to support the unique needs that every person and family has. So I think it's going to hopefully allow things to look very differently in the near future.
Hello, am I still on?
Yes.
Okay. So like this whole thing about SDM and self-discrimination, how is it gonna work within the minority communities, because there's lack of information, and when I ask my service provider, they don't even know what it is. So I'm like, what is regional center? What is the regional center system in California doing to tackle this issue? Because there is so much disparity across the state, and every regional center has different rules. So how is this gonna work? Is there I'm sorry, excuse my CP for a second. Okay. So moving forward, is there a strategic plan that you guys are gonna do, or is this going to be handled by vendors or by each regional center? For example, can you please let me know what Westside is doing as a strategic plan?
Sure. Sure, Rebecca. So you bring up, some very valid points. And the first thing let me say is that yes, Westside is doing strategic planning. We brought that up today, and it's going to be inclusive of several things that involve the regional center. But specifically, self-determination, you're right. Each regional center is doing things a little bit different than the next. We are getting, similar guidance from the Department of Developmental Services on how, things should be implemented. And Westside is working on that. You mentioned your provider not knowing information about self-determination, and you're right, we're doing that. Our community services department is starting to meet with our vendors and provide orientation and training around self-determination. Westside has been focused on the 70 individuals that were selected through the lottery and focusing on those families or individuals to get them transferred into self-determination. However, now we are starting to schedule orientation meetings and informational meetings at Westside. That information should be out by next week. If you go to our website, we have a specific page on self-determination. I'd like to invite you and anyone else in our community that is interested. We have our local advisory committee on self-determination that meets every second Tuesday of the month from 6 to 8. That information is on our website. It's, because of the pandemic, we've been meeting virtually, and that's been going on. We've actually held an informational, what we call the self-determination mixer, and invited all our community, along with those that have already been selected and are participating in self-determination, to provide them with, again, information. As Dr. Kelly's saying, I think the biggest focus is making sure that our community is informed, has the information that is needed so that it can support them in making decisions.
Okay, thank you very much.
And one final thing I included on Caesar is strategic planning. We're also right now, what we're doing with strategic planning is we're trying to hear everybody's voice in our community. So a survey should have gone out, encourage everybody to complete it. But one of the things that we're looking at is we really want to hear from folks. We're doing an assessment of what people feel like they're not getting or that they wish that we were doing a better job at, so that we could really focus our efforts to ensure that we're doing a better job in those areas. And certainly one of those is disparity.
Okay, so we have another 5 hands up. There's some things in the box as well. Cesar, I don't know if you've been able to take a look at the ones that are in Spanish, since I'm not able to read those myself. I'm not sure if they would be asked out loud or just typed in response to, but I will bring over the next person in the meantime. So Stephanie Parks, you should be able to speak now.
Hi, I'm interested to know if you have supports in your vaccine clinic. My son is really quite scared of getting his vaccination completed and would need support in holding still, but I also don't want him restrained or receiving any more trauma from the experience. Have you considered this for your clients, and how are you addressing it?
Well, we're doing this, and I think doing a great job probably is our Achievable clinic, and we've been sending out, so they've been doing it, and Achievable is really specific to working with individuals with developmental disabilities. And what I know that they've been doing is sometimes if somebody needs it, they'll do a trial run. They'll come up and they'll do like a practice injection, but not like a real injection, just so that they're comfortable coming to the appointment, seeing the doctor, seeing the place, and kind of doing a trial run. But what we've experienced, like we've also done a drive-through, and we've gotten we're certainly cognizant. We've had a lot of individuals that are needle phobic or unsure about people in white coats, and so we try to, all of us are dressed pretty casually, and it's very informal and very quick. And we were surprised that actually we have not had or encountered as much challenge as we anticipated, especially with people. We've had a lot of individuals that we've identified that have behavioral issues and around doctor's appointments that have really done quite well. So what I would suggest is But if you really need additional, I think that a good place to go is the Achievable Clinic, because they've been doing a great job really making people comfortable, and if need be, just having them do a trial run, like I said.
Great, thank you. That sounds wonderful, and thank you for your answer. I just want to let you know, though, that I have tried communicating with both clinics, the Achievable and your vaccination clinic, and cannot get them to answer the phone and or an email. So I've been unable to get my son access. And I think that's incredibly important.
I put my personal email. If you want to email me, Stephanie, I will make sure that we set you up with an appointment. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate your help.
You got it.
I just re-added it, Tom. I think it only went to the speakers, but your email is now in there. So we probably have time for about 2 more questions. We do need to close out at 6 because of the our interpreter situation. So I think we could take maybe 2 more. If that's all right. Let's see. So Lourdes Gomez, you should be able to speak.
I am really quite surprised at how this is going, because I thought I came to a disparity meeting. Am I in the wrong meeting? Because I did not hear anything about how the what plans or what are you doing to implement something? You're talking about self-determination. Well, you have customers by ethnicity of Hispanic with as high as couple hundred people not receiving services. I really want to know what's going on. What is your plan for strategy for that?
Well, like I thought I addressed it, but I try again. So one of the things that we're realizing is that education and information is trying to ensure that we have as much information disseminated so that everybody basically, in order to order from our menu, you need to know everything that's on the menu. And some of the people have said that they don't know what services or supports. So we're trying to ensure that everybody, so like if you look at our YouTube channel, and we've certainly put that out, we're trying to get that out to individuals. It's in English and Spanish, trying to make sure that all of our materials are translated, making sure that we are doing outreach to families. And then the other thing that we realized, because we had an enhanced case manager group that was working with Hispanic families and really trying to understand and gain information on what are some of the challenges that they had accessing services. And the main thing that a lot of families had said is that they felt there were some trust issues, there was uncertainty, they didn't feel like they were getting the right information. So I was really trying, and Cesar spoke to this as well, is really doing a training initiative to ensure that our staff recognizes some of these barriers and challenges and is more prepared to have a more effective communication strategy going forward. And the same is we're also educating families, like what questions that they need to ask when they have a meeting with the service coordinator. What are their rights? What are their appeal rights? What services do we have? So it's really, really about information in English and Spanish, because we realize also one of the main challenges with the Hispanic population has been around language, and that there's no reason that should be there as a barrier, because we are able to provide supports in English and Spanish, and we're able to provide information in both languages. Cesar, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think you covered it well, Tom. And really that is been our focus, and that's what we really want to continue to make sure that we keep that at the very front of everything that we're doing. And as we're doing different things, making sure that we are completely, keeping that in mind.
I mean, the thing is, like, you guys did exceptionally well for the Hispanic population in comparison to other regional centers. But the numbers for African Americans are really high for somebody for an institution that is, for a population that is native speaker. The numbers are really high, and that is a concern to me as an independent facilitator, to see that there is disparity even among the native English speakers. That tells me there's a lack of understanding or a different culture of understanding the unmet needs, because there are hundreds of native speakers who did not receive services.
You know, and the other thing that I think I would speak to that we recognize, you know, there's some people, you know, the squeaky wheel sometimes gets the grease. So there's a lot of people that are really, have the information, have the knowledge, and are doing everything they can to access everything that they can from our system. And then there's other people that are just a little bit more reticent, don't want to ask for things, don't want to be, are kind of more quiet. And we're trying to really empower those groups, is that they should be, that there's things that they should and they can access for themselves, that they should be getting the same support. So I think there's also an empowerment aspect to this, that to really, you know, and I think the education and empowerment go hand in hand, is to really make individuals and to teach our population to be more active. And I think that's not just on our side. I think families, you know, like I mentioned, educating other people to be active, to advocate for themselves, to ensure that they're getting everything that they should from this system. Because there's a lot of people that just sort of do that naturally, and other people that I think are a little bit more reticent. And so trying to really encourage them and empower them to get everything that they should.
Well, I'm with the 3 different Spanish speaking groups, and our numbers are 250 with ICC. Padres Ayudando Padres is 68, and Living Inside the Puzzle, there's just so many groups that we're coming forward, because what we see is there's so many services that have not been offered to the community. And we're, with the self-determination coming up and with having attended the conference for Disability Voices United, we're ready to come in and ask for the help our children need so they could be successful in the future. So once we're gone, they have coping skills, they have learned and have become part of the system, we're integrated into community, that they will have the natural resources self-determination is advocating, because that's the reality we're here to look, that we're looking to build for our children as we're living our daily life. But please understand that we're already dealing with special education through LSUSD. We're already dealing with Social Security. We're really dealing with chronic condition, more than dual diagnosis, because as you could understand, being isolated creates different issues. And that is the reality of our children and our young adults. So we are dealing with a lot. The idea is, as service coordinator, the name of it is to help us coordinate the services, not to create roadblocks for us to hover up and learn to accumulate the vocabulary. Empower us, but work with us. Work with us as equal partner, and then you have the community, because it feels that a lot of it is power over our community and not power with our community. So I could please advocate for that, because we're really looking forward to have our children being integrated into the community, but as equal partners, because they're human beings. So thank you.
And thank you. I mean, I appreciate our advocacy groups and our advocacy efforts. I think we're very supportive of self-advocacy. I think this is very important, and it's a good way to get the information out. We host a lot of advocacy groups, so I really appreciate you getting the information out to those folks and empowering everyone. I think that's great. I think that's going to help us tremendously.
Okay. So we have just a couple more slides, Dr. Kelly, so I'm going to move us through those really fast. It's just 2. We're basically at the end. So it's just additional ways that people can get involved.
So the first Wednesday of the month, Board of Directors group. We also have a number of different subcommittees that everybody's welcome to come to, including, and we've talked a lot about it, our strategic planning committee. And then also political action, our consumer advocacy advisory committee, client services, political action, self-determination, which Caesar also touched upon. If you look on our website, you can find when those events are happening. It will list different upcoming events and how to register for those. and also some other ways to connect with us. So we mentioned our YouTube channel. We have a lot of really good information, English and Spanish, on our YouTube channel. Also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, because we also constantly put out a lot of information, resources there as well, and our newsletter. You can sign up for it to receive regular updates and bulletins. And on that, I really want to thank everybody. I really appreciated all the input in the conversation. It always feels richer when we have a dialogue and a discussion, and appreciate everybody coming out tonight.
Thank you, everybody. Just a quick note in case you didn't see it in the chat box. If your question was not answered tonight, you can email info-wside@westsidrc.org with your comment or question. And also, if you did enter something in the Q&A box, please note that it will be captured and passed on to the appropriate staff. If it requires a response, you will hopefully be able to get a response as well. So thank you, everybody. We thank you for coming out tonight. Take care.